The Bible warns of a man who will deceive the nations. But what if the most terrifying clues weren't just hidden, they were removed? Most people look at modern maps to find the Antichrist, but they're looking at the wrong signs. While the world debates countries and borders, ancient sealed texts reveal a DNA of power that has been hiding in plain sight for centuries. I've spent years digging through history that was intentionally left out of your modern Bible. And what I found wasn't a location, it was a system. Before we reveal the truth that 99% of people are missing, we need to look at the forbidden blueprints of an empire that never actually died. Have you ever wondered why some books were left out of the Bible? I mean, think about it. If we're talking about the most important event in human history, the return of Christ and the rise of his ultimate rival, wouldn't you want every single piece of the puzzle? But for centuries, certain manuscripts were kept in the shadows, labeled as hidden or sealed. I'm talking about texts like the Book of Enoch and the Didache. Now here is the part that most people miss. These weren't just random stories. They were once considered so vital that even the writers of the New Testament quoted them. So why were they sidelined? Maybe because they reveal a source code for the Antichrist that is far more complex than just a politician in a suit. While the standard books we read in church give us the political outline, the Book of Enoch dives deep into what I call the hybrid agenda. It describes a world where the boundaries between the human and the supernatural are blurred. It talks about forbidden knowledge, secrets of the heavens that were never meant for man to master. But this is where it gets really crazy. According to these texts, the Antichrist doesn't just rise because people vote for him. He rises because he possesses this forbidden wisdom. He's a world deceiver, not just through lies, but through a mastery of reality itself. Let me show you a specific passage from Enoch that you won't find in your standard Bible. It says, "And the world deceiver shall appear as a son of God, and shall commit iniquities such as have never yet happened since the beginning." But it goes further, describing how this being would teach men the crafting of weapons and the secrets of the stars to turn them against their creator. Does that sound familiar? When I look at how we are currently merging our lives with AI, trying to rewrite our own DNA, and looking to the stars to become like gods, I can't help but think, we aren't just watching a political shift. We are watching the activation of this ancient source code. Early Christian writings like the Didache warn us that this ruler will perform signs and wonders, so convincing that even the elect could be fooled. But they aren't just magic tricks. They are the application of a technology or a science that was documented thousands of years ago in these forgotten pages. So if you've been searching for the Antichrist by looking at election results or border disputes, you might be looking at the wrong map entirely. We need to stop looking at modern politics and start looking at the archaeological blueprint of power. Because once you understand the code, you realize that the location doesn't matter as much as the system. And to see that system in action, we have to look at an empire that everyone says is gone, but is actually standing right in front of us. Now, I want you to think about something that almost everyone gets wrong when they talk about the Roman Empire. We've been taught that Rome fell in 476 AD, and that was it, right? But what if I told you the empire didn't actually end? It just moved. Now look at this. Remember the statue in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream? It had 2 legs of iron. 2. But most Bible scholars today spend all their time staring at just one of those legs, the Western one, the one that points to Rome and the European Union. But here is the crazy part, the part I couldn't believe when I first saw the data. When Rome in the West was being looted and burned, the eastern leg, what we call the Byzantine Empire, was actually entering its golden age. While Western Europe was struggling through the Dark Ages, the Eastern Roman Empire was thriving for another 1,000 years in a city called Constantinople, or modern-day Istanbul. Now, why does this matter for the Antichrist? Because if the Roman Empire has 2 legs, Why are we only looking for him to rise out of the West? It's a massive blind spot. Look at a map of the world today. This eastern leg sits right at the intersection of Europe and Asia. It's the bridge between worlds. It's the place where Roman law once met Eastern mysticism. I believe the Antichrist isn't just going to be a Western politician from Brussels or Washington. He's going to rise from this specific intersection. Think about it. This would allow him to do something a Western leader never could. He could unite the Islamic world and the Christian world under one single banner of peace. We've been looking for a purely European savior, but the Bible might be pointing us toward a much more strategic location, the literal center of the ancient world. And when you look at the rise of new powers in this region today, the old Byzantine lands, the picture starts to get very, very clear. But before we get to the exact geography, we have to talk about a specific direction that the Bible mentions over and over again, a direction that caused absolute terror in the ancient world. To really understand the origin of the Antichrist, we have to stop looking at modern political borders for a moment. Instead, we need to learn how to look at a map through the eyes of the ancient prophets. Imagine for a second that you are standing on the walls of Jerusalem 2,500 years ago. As you look around, you realize something very important about your survival. To your east and south, you have the desert, a natural, brutal barrier that no massive army could easily cross. To your west, you have the Great Sea. But when you turn your head and look toward the north, that is where the path is clear. That is where the mountains give way to the roads that lead straight to your gates. In the ancient mind, the north was more than just a direction. It was the place where the storm lived. Every single empire that ever brought destruction to the Holy Land, from the fierce Assyrians to the mighty Babylonians, they all marched down from the north. This is exactly why the prophet Jeremiah warned, "Out of the north an evil shall break forth upon all the inhabitants of the land." He was describing a strategic reality that hasn't changed in thousands of years. Now let's talk about the mysterious figures of Gog and Magog. I've seen so many people try to pin these names onto one specific country, like Russia or Turkey. But pay close attention to what the Bible actually says. It calls the Antichrist the King of the North. If we use this northern compass, our focus shifts away from the distant power centers of the West and lands directly on the most volatile regions of the world today, modern-day Turkey and Syria. Think about what is happening in those lands right now. We see a massive revival of imperial ambition and a gathering of military strength that we haven't seen in centuries. This is the cradle of invasions. It's the perfect staging ground for a leader who can unite a coalition of nations and march them toward Jerusalem. But here is the part that really made me stop and think. When Ezekiel describes this military storm, he isn't just talking about tanks and soldiers. He's talking about a power that shatters the world's sense of security. The Antichrist is a leader who understands that to conquer the world, you don't just need a bigger army, you need to control the very direction of history. But that leads us to a massive question. If this leader rises as a military power from the north, how does he get a modern, sophisticated world to accept him as a savior? How does he convince the secular West and the religious East to lay down their arms and follow him? To solve that mystery, we have to look past the weapons. We have to look at the psychological trap he sets for humanity. Because the Antichrist isn't just coming to fight a war, he's coming to solve a crisis. And that brings us to the most chilling part of this entire puzzle. Why the world won't just fear him, they will actually love him. Now, let's talk about the psychological trap he sets for humanity. Because the Antichrist isn't just coming to fight a war, he's coming to solve a crisis. And that brings us to the most chilling part of this entire puzzle. Why the world won't just fear him, they will actually love him. We've all seen the movies where the Antichrist is portrayed as this obvious, red-eyed monster. But if you look at the psychological profile suggested by ancient texts and modern behavioral science, the reality is much more subtle. Think about it. In a world that is absolutely exhausted by division, war, and economic collapse, what is the one thing everyone is starving for? Harmony. This leader isn't going to appear as an invader. He's going to appear as the ultimate problem solver. He won't use a sword to make you bow. He'll use a solution. Imagine a man with such a high level of emotional intelligence that he can speak the language of the political right and the political left at the same time. A man who can neutralize every conflicting faith into one single global religion of security and prosperity. I've been studying how our current society reacts to crises, and I've noticed a very dangerous pattern. When the chaos reaches a certain level, human psychology enters a state called regression. This is where we stop caring about our freedom and start looking for a father figure to tell us everything is going to be okay. We don't want to think anymore, we just want to be safe. And this is where it gets really strange. Have you noticed how today's algorithms already know exactly how to manipulate your emotions? They know what makes you angry, what makes you happy, and what makes you trust someone. We are being conditioned right now to follow a symbol of harmony. We are being prepared for a leader who won't need to force us into submission. We will actually line up for it. But how does he do it on such a massive scale? How does he manage to control the entire world's behavior at the exact same time? To understand that, we have to look past the man and look at the system he uses. We have to look at the global operating system that is being built right under our noses. Because while we've been looking for a physical city called Babylon, the Bible might be describing something much more modern, a network that follows you everywhere you go, a network that knows your identity, your money, and your every move. Let's look at how the ancient mark of the beast is becoming a digital reality. Now, I want you to forget about physical borders for a moment and look at the world through a different lens. For years, we've been looking for a city called Babylon, a literal place with stone walls and gates. But what if Babylon in the end times isn't a location you can visit on a map? What if it's a system that lives in the air all around us? I want you to pay close attention to this, because this is the part that most people miss. We are currently witnessing the convergence of three massive technological pillars: digital identity, central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, and AI-driven behavior tracking. When you combine these three, you don't just get a new economy, you get what I call a global operating system. Think about how the Bible describes the Antichrist reign. It says that no one will be able to buy or sell unless they have a specific mark or the name of the beast. For centuries, people thought this meant a physical tattoo or a chip under the skin. But in a world where your entire life is already digital, do you really need a physical mark? If your money is digital and your identity is digital, then Mystery Babylon becomes a global data network. It's an invisible cloud that follows you everywhere. In this system, the mark isn't just a symbol. It's an immutable digital signature. And here is the scary part. If the system decides to deplatform you because your beliefs don't align with the new global order, you don't just lose your social media, you lose your ability to exist in the economy. You are effectively erased. But here's the part that really shook me when I realized it. We aren't being forced into this system by a dark army. We are actually building the cells of our own cage every single day. Think about your smartphone. It knows where you go, what you buy, and even what you're thinking about before you say it. We traded our privacy for convenience. We traded our autonomy for one-click delivery. We are so addicted to the convenience of this digital world that when the Antichrist finally offers his universal ID to solve the global chaos, most people won't see it as a threat. They will see it as a massive upgrade. It's the comfort shock. The comfort shock. We are being conditioned to believe that as long as the system works and our lives are easy, it doesn't matter who owns the network. But once the cage is locked, the owner of that network has total control over every human soul connected to it. This leads us to the ultimate question. If this system is already being built, and the stage is set for a charismatic leader to take the wheel. What are we supposed to do? How do we recognize the difference between a real solution and a false light that is leading us into a trap? To find out, we have to look at the very last signs that must occur before the dawn of a new era. Because the rise of the Antichrist is just the final shadow before the return of the true light. So, what does all of this mean for us today? Here is the thing I really want you to understand. The Antichrist isn't coming to destroy the world in some obvious, catastrophic way. He's coming to fix it. He's coming to offer solutions to the very crises we are terrified of right now. True vigilance isn't just about watching the news or tracking geopolitical movements. It's about recognizing the exact moment when our God-given freedom is being traded for a false sense of security. Because once you accept the safety of the system, you've already stepped into the cage. We are living in a time of a false dawn, a time where the solutions will look like light, but they are actually leading us into the deepest shadow. So I have to ask you, when the world finally demands a single voice to bring order to the chaos, will you be able to tell the difference between the true savior and the ultimate deceiver? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you see these systems being built in our world right now? I'd love to hear your perspective. And remember, as dark as the world may seem, the rise of the final shadow only proves that the true light is closer than ever before.